safety of the people, I think the American government has the right to do whatever.
There's laws in place, they need to be enforced.
Every year, my insurance payments, my premiums go up.
Something's got to be done because there's a lot of people running around without health care.
Obviously, there's a lot of debate as to whether illegal aliens are a positive influence on this economy.
It's hard for us to afford everything the way it is, and then for us to have all kinds of other people to support.
But we are a country of the free, and so I think we have to be very open-minded.
I just think proper education, learning the right things.
When I look on television and I see 3 separate shooting incidents,
I think they need to get tough with it.
Straightening out the politicians.
Keep to their word, and to be honest, I think that's important.
They make a lot of decisions which sort of impact my life, impact the children's lives.
I think it's an obligation to vote. I think we all need to do that.
Welcome everyone, I'm Tom Overley. KSMQ in partnership with KTTC is pleased to present to you Election 2006. As opposed to the interviews we've conducted in this series today, this special will be a traditional debate. We are joined today by Republican incumbent Representative Gil Gutknecht and his opponent Democrat candidate Mr. Tim Walz. Both of these gentlemen are vying to represent you as U.S. Representative for District 1. I'll be asking questions compiled by our internal election team, and most importantly, questions submitted by you, the voters. We have received hundreds of questions from those interested in this race, and some questions were asked so frequently we did not assign any one viewer name. So whether a name is identified or not, know that KSMQ made every effort to give you a voice in this race. Neither of the candidates has been provided with these questions ahead of time, and so now for the ground rules. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening and closing statements, and each will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. There will be no rebuttals in this debate. And when the candidates hear the bell, a lot of time has come to an end. And during a coin toss before the show, Gil elected to speak first in the opening statement. So Representative Gutknecht, the first question or opening statement goes to you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tom, and thanks to KSMQ for providing us with this opportunity. You know, campaigns have become awfully nasty over the last several years, and hopefully tonight we can cut through some of that clutter and talk about the real issues that affect you and ultimately will affect the future of this country. It's been an honor to serve you in the United States Congress for the last 12 years. You know, we've been through a lot together. We've been through recessions, we were through a dot-com boom and then a bust. We've moved from $250 billion deficits to $250 billion surpluses, and in the wake of September 11th, we watched them slip away. We've reformed welfare. Today, 50% of the welfare caseloads are 50% less today than they were in 1994. I'm proud of that fact. In fact, I often tell people that welfare reform was not about saving money. It was about saving people. We've reduced the tax burdens on all Americans. We've seen the American economy more than double. We've toppled some tyrants, and we've given freedom a chance in places like Bosnia, Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, and now Iraq. On your behalf, I've had to make 5 very, very difficult phone calls to thank families whose sons have given their last full measure of devotion to the United States of America. We've watched the Twin Towers collapse, and we've seen America standing tall. Through it all, I've always tried to maintain my God-given optimism. I believe in the future, and I believe in you. I often quote Jesse Jackson. He says, if you want to change the world, you got to first change your neighborhood. And if you can't change your neighborhood, at least be a good example. I've always tried to conduct myself in ways that would be good examples to our young people. Finally, I strongly believe that America is safer, it is stronger, and it is more prosperous today thanks to the policies that we've pursued in Washington, especially in the last 6 years. I look forward to tonight's forum, and again, I thank the sponsors for hosting us tonight.
All right, Representative Gutknecht, thank you very much. Tim Walz, your opening statement.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tom, and thank you to KSMQ for making this service available to the public. To each of you out there, I thank you deeply for fulfilling your duty on one of the most important duties as a citizen to this great nation, and that's becoming educated on the issues and the candidates that will affect the policy in this country, not just for this generation, not just to this next election, but to future generations, to have a vision on this country. Our great nation is an experiment in democracy. Our great nation is an experiment of what can be done when people are given the freedom and the opportunity to achieve their best. We're facing challenges now. We're bogged down in a war in Iraq that is taking the nation's resources and sapping the blood of our young. We have 2,800 dead in Iraq, and we're seeing no progress on the ground in terms of making this country actually safer from those people who were responsible for attacking this nation. Al-Qaeda is responsible for it, and we need to make sure our resources are focused in that regards. We have a challenge in the economy. We are $9 trillion in debt. We are spending at $250 billion in deficit spending yearly. This is a burden that will saddle our children for years to come. We are also seeing corruption in Congress that is shaking America's will in the faith they have in their government. But as I've traveled this district for the past 22 months, traveled over 100,000 miles, and listened to literally thousands and thousands of our citizens, I am incredibly optimistic. The genius of this great country is there is nothing wrong with this nation that cannot be fixed in the next few days with an election. We can make an economy that's fair for everyone, not just the richest few. We can satisfy and secure this nation while getting ourselves out of Iraq and letting them stand on their own. And we can bring dignity and ethics back to the House of Representatives and make this nation proud of its government the way that the rest of the world wants to see this nation, standing on our principles, standing on our values, and truly leading this nation and this world with compassion. I look forward to tonight's debate, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Walz. Well, it seems the most discussed domestic topic this year is health care. Americans are certainly concerned about the rising cost of health insurance and prescription drugs. Gentlemen, are we in a crisis? And if so, what can we do to turn this trend? Representative Gutknecht.
Well, first of all, we overuse the word crisis, I think, in America today. The truth of the matter is, nationwide, about 93% of Americans have health care coverage. So for them, it's hard to say that it's a crisis. If you're one of those 7%, though, it is a crisis. And really, when you talk about health care, and we have a lot of discussion about health care, but nobody has the magic bullet that's going to solve the problem. But it really separates itself into two issues. First of all is affordability, and that's the biggest problem right now. And the second is whether or not you have access to the healthcare system. Let me just talk, first of all, a little bit about access. Access is somewhat overstated. The problem is that people who don't have health insurance are much more likely to go to the emergency rooms, where healthcare is even more expensive. But for most Americans, the real problem is affordability. And the answer, it really comes down to two things. First of all, you're either going to have a much bigger government control of healthcare, which I think would be a mistake, or you're going to invent models or help invent models that will create more competition, more choices, and more access through the private sector. We've done a number of things, whether it's health savings accounts. We're certainly trying to allow larger groups to pool together so they can get more affordable rates on their insurance. And there are also other models coming about that I think are going to make a big difference long term. But I think in the next Congress, clearly, health care has to be at the center of a big debate about where we go with health care. I certainly hope that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with a health care system that we have today that is the best in the world for that 93%.
Thank you, Mr. Walz.
Well, in response to that, Tom, it's not a crisis if you have health care. If you're one of the 47 million, and I question my opponent's numbers on that, I'm using the American Medical Association's numbers. If you're one of them, it is a crisis. They're making the decision whether to pay their rent at night, buy food, or take their child to the hospital for a yearly checkup. Those are crisis situations. This nation spends more than twice as much as any other industrialized nation, yet we have 47 million uninsured. We have many others on high deductible plans. What this is doing is it's not only a moral imperative that we fix this, the richest nation on earth be able to provide a basic right to its citizens, and that's basic health care. It's an economic imperative. We're putting ourselves at a disadvantage economically with the rest of the world. In 1988, 7% of a family's disposable income went to health care costs. Today, it's 19%. This is strapping the American families, it's crimping the economy, it's sending our jobs overseas because employers can no longer deal with it. The specter or the straw man that the government is going to make your decisions, most of us know that large private insurers are doing that at this time. We can do better in this country. Is it going to be single-payer health care? It could be. Is there a solution? I am absolutely optimistic. This is the United States of America. If we chose to put someone on the moon, we can choose to get basic health care coverage to all of our children. It's simply a matter of political will to do it.
All right, thank you. What is your viewpoint on the issue of illegal immigration, and what measures should we implement at the federal level to manage this issue? Mr. Walz, we'll begin with you on this.
Well, first of all, every sovereign nation has the rights to secure its border. I'd like to make perfectly clear for those of you who know, I have never advocated amnesty in any way, and I would like to make that clear because I too believe that this is an issue that needs to be dealt with for the systemic causes, the deep overriding causes. This nation has an issue that we have approximately 12 million undocumented workers here. Many of them are finding work here at substandard wages. We need to ask the question, why in 1999 were we issuing hundreds of fines against employers for the hiring of undocumented workers, and today we're issuing 3? The issue here is, what is the insatiable desire for ever-cheapening labor, and what is the push that's pushing workers out of the Latin American countries predominantly to come to the United States? With that being said, we need an overhaul of our legal immigration policy. We need to have people have the ability to enter this country, be documented using biometric cards and technology, fulfilling the jobs that are here that are available. We need to truly secure the border. We've had a Congress that has been in, and this problem has been increasingly reaching a crisis point over the last 6 years. We have a Congress that wants to talk immigration reform, to stir up fear in this, but doesn't want to do the things necessary to implement true change. So we can do this with our economic and our sovereignty in mind. We can do this with humanitarian principles in mind, and we can do this as soon as we choose to in the United States Congress.
Mr. Gutknecht, your response.
Well, let me clarify a few things. First of all, Tim, with all due respect, you say you don't support amnesty, but in truth, you support a pathway to citizenship. And for a lot of people, that's a distinction without a difference. And so if you go down that path, if you allow, in a sense, 12 million, if that's the number, people who are in the country illegally, a pathway to citizenship, ultimately we asked the Congressional Budget Office, what would that cost in terms of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security? The answer they gave us, and this is the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, they told us it would cost $50 billion. I went out to Worthington and I had a town hall meeting. We talked about illegal immigration and what's going on right here in the 1st Congressional District. And I said very plainly, and I've said this consistently, we have to defend our borders and we have to enforce our laws. And as a result of that, Tim, you wrote an editorial that appeared in the Pipestone paper that said I was misguided. Well, I think that's where about 90% of the people who live in the 1st Congressional District are. That's what they think. We have to defend our borders. We have to enforce the laws. Now, ultimately, if we need a larger number of guest workers, I agree. We should come up with technology. We ought to have an ID system that uses biometrics that ultimately makes certain that employers are not held in double jeopardy. But in the end, we have to enforce our borders. We have to defend our laws. And amnesty or a pathway to citizenship is not only a bad idea, but it's not fair to those millions of people who are waiting in line to come into the United States. And worse than that, it's not fair to American workers.
All right. We will now offer each candidate a chance to ask a question of his opponent. This will be the first of 4 in this hour-long program. Mr. Walz, what question do you want to ask Representative Gutknecht?
Well, 12 years ago, the representative, when he was running for office, made a promise and a pledge, and he signed his names on the sacred grounds of the Capitol. And he told us with the contract with America that he was going to do about 4 things with that. He was going to balance the national budget and keep it balanced. He was going to clean up corruption in Congress. He was going to run for only 12 years, 6 terms in office, because after that you would lose your effectiveness. And he promised us to never get us into a foreign war without an exit strategy. I'd like to ask the representative how he answers the people out there tonight on those failures in those promises.
Well, first of all, Tim, we have balanced the budget. And when people said we couldn't do that, we literally took a $250 billion deficit and turned it into a $250 billion surplus. Now, all of that changed on September 11th. Let's talk about term limits. I do support term limits, and I voted for them consistently. But it was a mistake to say that I would do this unilaterally. In fact, I think the real promise was something like I said, I can't imagine that I would serve more than 12 years. I probably should not have said that. In terms of corruption, yes, there is corruption in Washington. But the good news is those who have violated our rules and our laws are being held fully accountable. I have said from the beginning, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you ought to be held fully accountable when you violate the public trust. I think when you look at the record, my record, I think it's pretty clear that I not only signed that contract, I believe it, and I believe it today. The reforms that we started in 1994 are paying real dividends for the American people. The economy, as I said earlier, is stronger than ever. Our farm economy is stronger than ever. And if you look at how much stronger we are relative to the rest of the world, America has made real progress with the reforms we've done in Washington since you sent me to Congress.
All right, Mr. Gutknecht, a question for Tim Walz.
Well, Tim, you answered a questionnaire and said that you favored the repeal of the tax cuts that we passed in 2001. Did you understand when you signed that that meant bringing back the marriage penalty tax and raising taxes, according to the IRS, $2,396 on the average family in Minnesota?
Yes, the questionnaire I filled out was Project Vote Smart. It's a bipartisan group of legislators, including John McCain, Newt Gingrich, Geraldine Ferraro, Michael Dukakis, and that group is out there to make sure the voters of the district find out exactly where their candidates stand for office. I took the time in about 3 hours to fill out every single portion of that questionnaire in great detail. My opponent chose not to do so. He took that and took some of the statistics out of there, and by Project Vote Smart's own public condemnation, twisted them around. What I've said is I will roll back the tax cuts on those making $330,000 or more. The impact on the middle class, we will see child care tax credits increase. We will see the ability for tuition tax credits to increase for the middle class. In my plan, the middle class will start to benefit from this economy with only a very few, by the Congressional Budget's Office own numbers, about 2% are seeing about 93% of the cuts that were made here. So my opponent has misrepresented my record on this, and I think it's very clear when every single working group in this country, carpenters, laborers, engineers, teachers, police, fire, whatever it may be, are supporting my candidacy for this office, it's very clear who will help the middle class and who won't. I'm quite offended, I might say, by my opponent's inability to be honest and open these questions, and by Project Vote Smart's public condemnation of taking this out of context. But that's exactly where it's at. If you're making more than $330,000, you won't see a tax increase. You'll just see it roll back.
Okay. Viewer question, is the United States too dependent on foreign oil, and is there not enough oil within our own control to sustain us? Representative Gutknecht.
Well, first of all, we are too dependent on foreign oil. Let me just give you some numbers. Every business day, we spend about $1 billion to buy oil, much of it from countries that don't like us. That's a terrible statistic, but if you get inside of that number, it actually gets worse. When you look at the opportunity cost that $1 billion represents, it represents about 10,000 good-paying jobs here in the United States that we, in effect, export every business day. That's a terrible statistic. And if you want to put a face on some of those 10,000 jobs, just go to the new ethanol plant just outside of Lake Crystal, Minnesota. They employ about 41 people at a starting salary of over $16 an hour, plus good health care benefits. So those are the jobs we're exporting every day. That's why I believe we need a very strong effort to create more energy here in the United States. And a big part of that is going to be renewable energy. That's why I've been a big supporter of ethanol and biodiesel, biomass, wind energy that we can produce right here in southern Minnesota. Let me give you another statistic that I'm very proud of that we helped happen. Here in southern Minnesota, within 5 years, we're going to be producing over 1 billion gallons of ethanol every year. That's going to make a huge difference. And if we do the right things in Washington, I know that our farmers will respond. It'll give them access to a new market, but more importantly, it will make America much more energy independent.
Mr. Walz.
Yes, we are much too dependent on foreign oil and oil in general. I might make a couple of notes on this. If you voted for this energy bill that passed through, it has made us 6% more dependent on foreign oil. It has given away billions to the fossil fuels industry, and just today, Exxon's announcing a $10.5 billion third quarter earnings. You can't be for renewables, and you can't be for energy independence if you continue to go down that road, as my opponent has. A couple things that we can do on this. If we increase our mileage standards in our automobiles by a mere 7 miles per gallon on the average, what we will see is a reduction in 3.1 million barrels imported a day. That's exactly the amount we import from the Middle East. We have the ability to move our subsidies and move the help and the research dollars to true renewables, but that's not happening now. Everybody in America, every single one of you sitting out there tonight knows that we need to become energy independent. You know we need to use renewables. You know we need to clean up our environment, and you know you want that done. This Congress has done the opposite. Lip service to the American people is what's gone on for 6 years on this, and we absolutely can turn this around. We can absolutely invest in renewables. We absolutely have the ability here in southern Minnesota, but none of that will happen if you do not change the Congress to a Congress that is committed to this and is not taking and in the paychecks of the large oil companies. It's as simple as that.
It has been almost 5 years since American troops entered Iraq. Is our presence in Iraq and the war on terror the same battle, Mr. Walz?
They are not the same battle. The war in Afghanistan was brought to us. The perpetrators of September 11th, which no American needs reminded of, were perpetrated by al-Qaeda, by Osama bin Laden, who is still at large today. The National Republican Campaign Committee has been running ads with Osama bin Laden. I'm assuming that's to remind us that he's still out there and get us motivated to try and capture him, not to try and strike fear into the American public. This president and this Congress shifted the focus from the true war on terror and put it to Iraq. We are now $390 billion later, $8 billion a month, 2,800 young Americans, 22,000 wounded, and countless tens of thousands of Iraqis. And by all accounts from the CIA and our intelligence organizations, we have now created more terrorists, many of those trained in Iraq going back to Afghanistan that's slipping away. Let me tell you what true security means. For 1 month spending in Iraq, $8 billion. We could secure and harden all of our nuclear facilities. We could provide all of the help we need to secure our chemical plants. We could provide the $6 billion necessary to secure all of our transit stations, buses and airports and all of those types of things. And we could truly secure our ports. When 94% of our containers coming into America are still checked at this time, are unchecked, it's an absolute travesty. This administration took us to an unjustified war in Iraq where our warriors are doing the best they can. They are the best that's ever been fielded. They left them there. They do not support the VA on the back end, and this country is no safer because of it. We can do better.
Mr. Gutknecht, your thoughts on the war in Iraq?
Well, first of all, let me say that it's unfortunate today the Democratic Party is not the party of John Kennedy. John Kennedy said back in about 1962 that America would go anywhere, we would fight any foe, and we would shoulder any burden to keep the lamp of liberty burning brightly throughout the world. You know, I'm proud of what Americans have done. I mentioned in my opening that we have toppled some tyrants in places like Afghanistan, in Bosnia, in Yugoslavia. Did Slobodan Milosevic have anything to do with the terrorist threat? I don't think so. And what was going on in Bosnia wasn't directly related to al-Qaeda. But Americans went there because we understood that if America didn't intervene, that there would be wholesale bloodshed and that there would be a slaughter that was going on in those places. So I think America has done the right things for the right reasons. Was Saddam Hussein directly involved with al-Qaeda? Probably not. But he was a direct threat to his own citizens and to the stability of that entire region. He clearly wanted to dominate that region. So we can go back and relive history. But Americans are doing the right thing for the right reason. And it may not have been about terror when we started, but it certainly is about terror now. And if you believe for 1 minute that if we were to leave Iraq tomorrow, that they wouldn't have an even bigger recruiting tool to bring more terrorists into this fight against Islamic radicalism around the world, I think we're kidding ourselves. I have consistently said that we have to do all we can to put pressure on the Iraqis to police their own streets. I've said that literally since August when I went over there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gutknecht.